Scandinavian Bob here, hi. Let's take a look at an interesting dopamine graph that once you understand could be of great value for you in your attempt to quit porn. Now it may look familiar in the beginning, but there's a twist to it that comes later on, so make sure to stay with me here because you don't want to miss this. So let's say you're scrolling on some social media after work and suddenly you are hit by what you consider to be a very hot booty shaking video. Now if you're addicted to porn, getting exposed to that short video is what we call a cue or a trigger. At that exact moment, here's what's happening inside your brain. This is where your current baseline dopamine is. And when you're exposed to that video clip, you instantly get a small spike in dopamine like this, a very small one. Now this, my friends, is a pre-reward dopamine spike that happens before the real reward itself happens. This pre-reward moment is very, very short, just a few seconds. And during this moment you feel good, you feel excited because you now have an anticipation of a bigger reward. And if you're addicted to porn, you'll probably feel a desire to open up a real porn site here so you can get that bigger reward. But let's say that you manage to tell yourself that, hey, I'm doing nofap here, so I am not going to open up any adult sites here, and you stay away from acting on that trigger. Now what happens then is super interesting, so listen up here. If the brain does not get that anticipated reward after that mini spike, your dopamine levels instantly drop down below your baseline levels for a little while. Yes, you go into a temporary mini dopamine deficient state. Now this state here doesn't last very long, maybe only a few minutes depending on the person and the situation. But instead of feeling good like you did right here, it is now that you actually start to feel the strongest cravings. Yes, it is here when you suddenly feel you lack something. You feel that feeling of I need something now. It is like you feel some kind of void, even if that's not what you're actually thinking right then, but you feel it. And here's the deal. For those of you who are struggling to quit using porn, it is most often during this exact phase that you relapse, when you are in that mini deficient state. Now, once you understand this, you can actually set up your reboot so that when this happens, you have a counter action planned. For example, you could decide in advance that if you run into a trigger and you notice how this biological phenomenon I just shared starts taking place, but then you instantly leave your phone or computer and go for a 20-minute walk or something like that. By doing that, you are both removing yourself from the place where you can relapse, and by moving your body, you actually increase your dopamine levels in a healthy way, which means you bring yourself out of that mini dopamine slump state. And thus you can also get rid of those darker void urges I just talked about. At least most of them, maybe not all, but most of them. Now, what would happen if you eat some sugar or a donut instead to quickly get some dopamine over here to bring yourself up? Well, you would get an instant spike for sure, but that would again just lead into another mini crash when you're done eating. You see, that's the problem with cheap dopamine and instant gratification stuff, that you go down below your baseline after you're done. On the other hand, things like meditation or cold showers or exercise also raise dopamine. But with those, there is no crash coming after you're done. After you have exercised, your dopamine level stays elevated a bit for some time until it just slowly comes back to baseline like this, without you having to go through some temporary dopamine slump after that. Right, so I hope you found this interesting. Consider subscribing for more if you did, because I love talking about dopamine. So there will be more videos like this, I can promise you that. And if you're curious about my story of how I personally managed to quit using porn for good, you can take a look at this video right here, where I share that exact story of how that came to be. This is Scandinavian Bob signing out for today. And remember, like Winston Churchill used to say, if you're going through hell, keep going.